Auburn. They're 2-0, but
Yeah.
that was about as ugly a win as you're going to get, the win at Cal.
Yeah, it was literally survive in advance. It was, when you don't have your golf game and you're just trying to break 80, you're like, okay, I got it underneath 80. That was all it is. And that's why I expect there's going to be a lot of growing pains. But I will tell you this, I think it was a really important win to have one of those like ugly, grinded out, I don't know how the hell we won those games,
right.
Moments when it's on a road trip. Right.
Yeah.
If it happens at home, I don't think you get the same thing. But like when you're exhausted, it's 4 a.m. You're looking at each other like, holy hell, it's like getting caught in a shootout and somehow you're like, how did we survive that? Right. And like and like in the movies and you're like, oh, man, I can't believe that. And it's like a bonding experience. So I still think that Auburn ultimately might end up being the worst team in the SEC West. But I still think that obviously we just showed that, they're still pretty good. It's just I think the rest of the SEC West is a little bit ahead of them right now.
I said alphabetically. I'm showing off my Jacksonville State education because I jumped Auburn in front of Arkansas. So let's talk Arkansas. They get a big challenge. They get a big challenge against BYU. Well, I say a big challenge against BYU. BYU has been they struggled a little bit against Sam Houston State. They played Southern Utah, which I don't know what you learned from that. We haven't seen Arkansas get challenged yet. Yeah. This is a really interesting game, head-to-head with that Florida-Tennessee game, 6:30 ESPN2. I do think we'll know more about Arkansas after this one because BYU, it's kind of a brand. Kalani Sitake likes to play a physical style of football. This was a good game last year. We'll learn Arkansas this week. I think we'll know a little bit about Sam Pittman's group.
Yeah, the problem is I don't think we'll see Rocket Sanders again. This will be 2 weeks in a row that he's gone, not going to be available to play. And that's the troubling aspect of it. And so it feels like it needs to be a KJ Jefferson takeover game, which he's fully aware or fully capable of doing. But again, I can't look at Arkansas in the same light as an Alabama or even an LSU right now until I see Rocket Sanders, be 100% healthy, not just play, but I'm talking about like be the difference maker. Cause I think he's him and KJ are the most dynamic duo in college football when they're healthy.
All right, let's talk about the Mississippis. We'll start with Ole Miss. You referenced that game earlier, that final score. It was a crazy end of game sequence for them. Mm-hmm. That covers up that was a really tight game at Tulane. Now, our Ole Miss fans will say, wait a minute, that was a top 25 Tulane team. It was also a Tulane team starting their backup quarterback.
Right.
And Ole Miss struggled to run the football, which drives Lane Kiffin crazy because he's one of the best run game coaches in America.
Yeah, and that was the issue. Like when they started leaning on him a little bit late, you felt like, okay, this is more of an SEC roster wearing down Tulane. But again, the fact that they couldn't do it right off the bat, and I think a lot of it has to do with Trey Harris. Trey Harris has become their Laquan Treadwell, right? Their AJ Brown, like their dude. And when he had that early touchdown pass, but then got injured, he didn't return because I think it was cautionary. Like he's kind of the engine that makes Quinshawn and the rest of that rushing attack go. Like they struggled until they could find somebody else. So. I still think that they're in pretty good shape. And Jackson Dart showed to me like so much damn moxie in that game. Yeah. Like 4th and 4, they needed a play, and he kept answering the bell. So I've been really impressed for how he's progressed since spring, honestly.
It was on your network. You were in studio there. State playing Arizona.
Yeah. Weird game.
Yeah, it was a very strange game because you get the win in overtime. They never could put away Arizona and Jaden DeLara, the Arizona quarterback, who's a really talented player. But I tell you what worries me about if I'm a State fan, you're +5 in turnovers, it'd still have to go overtime to win that game. I know it's a win, and I'm going to celebrate a win anytime. But then I look at it and I'm like, boy, if we're +5 in turnovers against Arizona, we really don't need to be in overtime.
Yeah, and I think they're still trying to find out their identity with Barbe's offense, right? I mean, you see Will Rogers, would only attempted, I think, like 17 or 18 passes. So I don't still think they have the personnel to fully go to the offense that they want to right now. So it's almost like a transition year. But again, I like Zach Arnett, man. I don't know if you heard him, dropping the F-bomb.
Oh, I did. Yes.
Right afterwards. Yes. And he just, like you pull for guys in sports, and I don't have any vested interest in State or vested interest in Zach Arnett as a person. I don't really know him and his background, coming from New Mexico. But like, I look at him and I'm like, okay, I like this guy because it feels like one of us gets an opportunity to be a head coach, and he's going after it. So
he's the everyman, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, really, really interesting game for State and LSU. It's LSU's first, They play Grambling. You're not going to learn a ton from that. It's really their first big test since Florida State. That's an 11 o'clock ESPN game, straight out of game day. So I think you're going to learn a lot about both teams in that one. Early matchup at the Southeastern Conference, but I think a fascinating one there in Starkville.
Yeah, I think it helps LSU that it's a 11 a.m. kickoff as opposed to a mid-afternoon or a night game. I mean, just listen, the cowbells will ring, but it's just something different over at Davis Wade over at night. I like this kid Logan Diggs, the running back that for that LSU. He showed some glimpses. He wasn't available in week 1. Mason Smith back. I think that the Harold Perkins turning him into a linebacker experiment is all but done, and so I think now I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But I think for the second straight week, they're like, let's just see what we have here. And at some point, you got to let the Ferrari fly. And I think that's going to be a big change that we'll see coming up for LSU's defense.
If I were holding your family hostage and you had to correctly predict either the eventual West winner or the team that finished last in the West to release your family from bondage, which one do you think you would go with right now? Do you think you'd try to pick the winner or the team that finished dead last?
I would probably pick the team that would finish dead last. And I'm going to say that's Auburn. And no offense to Auburn, but I just think that I just don't see Peyton Thorne being that dude. And then outside of what's the kid? Eugene Asante.
Asante. He played an amazing game, didn't he?
Yeah, I just don't think they have those playmakers that I think that they'll struggle. But I'm still pretty confident that Alabama wins the West. I mean, they look the part in a bunch of different ways that, frankly, I didn't see from LSU even against Florida State. So, and then A&M is just who the hell knows? A&M is A&M.